For more than a decade, the world was told a comforting story. Interest rates were low. Debt was cheap. Money was abundant. Governments said it was necessary. Central banks said it was temporary. Economists said it was harmless. So most people believed them. But here's the uncomfortable truth very few are willing to say out loud. Zero interest rates were never a gift. They were a tax. A silent one. A hidden one. And it may be the most powerful wealth transfer mechanism ever engineered. Because while you were told borrowing was easy and money was free, something else was happening quietly in the background. Savings were being erased. Wages were being hollowed out. Asset prices were being inflated beyond reach. And debt was growing so large that the system now depends on low rates to survive. This isn't a story about bad policy or honest mistakes. It's a story about incentives, about power, and about why soaring global debt cannot exist without the lie of cheap money. To understand how we got here and why the consequences are now unavoidable, we have to go back to where interest really began. For most of human history, interest was understood intuitively. It was the price of waiting. If you lent something valuable, grain, silver, gold, you expected compensation for risk and time. Ancient civilizations understood this deeply. In Mesopotamia, interest rates were capped because rulers knew that unchecked lending could enslave entire populations. In Rome, excessive debt periodically forced emperors to cancel obligations outright because the alternative was social collapse. Interest wasn't just financial, it was political. It controlled who had power, who survived downturns, and who owned the future. For centuries, interest rates rose and fell with scarcity, productivity, and trust. When times were uncertain, rates rose. When capital was abundant, they fell. The mechanism wasn't perfect, but it was anchored in reality. The anchor would eventually disappear. The modern era changed everything. With the creation of central banks and fiat currency systems, interest rates stopped being set purely by markets. They became tools, levers, policy instruments. By the 20th century, governments realized something dangerous. Controlling interest rates meant controlling the economy itself. Lower rates encouraged borrowing. Higher rates discouraged it. Credit became a throttle for growth. This power was used cautiously at first. After the Great Depression, rates were adjusted to stabilize economies, not dominate them. The system still respected limits. But every crisis teaches governments the same lesson. Debt is easier than discipline. Wars, recessions, oil shocks, each time, borrowing expanded. Each time, interest rates were pushed lower to make the burden tolerable. Then came the turning point. The 2008 financial crisis didn't just break banks, it broke the old rules. To prevent total collapse, central banks slashed interest rates to near zero. Then they did something unprecedented. They kept them there. Years passed, rates stayed low. Debt exploded. Governments discovered a terrifying truth. At normal interest rates, their debt was unpayable, so rates couldn't rise. Corporations learned the same lesson. Instead of investing in productivity, they borrowed cheaply to buy back shares. Stock prices soared. Wages didn't. Households felt it too. Low rates pushed people into larger mortgages, longer terms, higher leverages to afford shelter. Zero interest rates weren't temporary anymore. They became structural. This is where the lie truly began. Because while borrowing felt cheaper, the cost didn't disappear. It moved. When interest rates fall toward zero, savers pay the price. Your bank deposit earns nothing. Inflation quietly erodes purchasing power. Retirement funds are forced into riskier assets just to survive. This is the hidden tax. It's no legislation required, no vote needed, no protest triggered. It operates silently, draining value from anyone who holds cash or depends on fixed income. Meanwhile, asset owners benefit. Stocks rise, real estate inflates, bonds appreciate. Wealth concentrates upward not because of productivity, but because of monetary design. Zero interest rates don't stimulate the economy equally. They reward leverage and punish prudence. Governments rely on this imbalance. Because the moment rates rise, the illusion breaks. Every attempt to normalize interest rates has failed. When central banks raise rates, markets panic. Asset prices fall. Debt servicing costs spike. Governments face budget crises. Corporations collapse under refinancing pressure. So rates come back down. This isn't incompetence. It's dependency. Global debt has grown so large that normal interest rates would trigger a chain reaction of defaults. The system can't afford honesty. Quantitative easing, yield curve control, emergency lending facilities, each tool exists for one reason: to suppress the true cost of debt. And every intervention makes the next crisis worse. Because zero interest rates don't solve debt problems, they delay them while making them larger. History is filled with examples of interest suppression ending badly. In Weimar Germany, artificially low rates combined with money printing destroyed savings and social trust. In Japan, decades of near-zero rates created stagnation and demographic collapse. In the United States today, interest payments alone threaten to overwhelm public finances. The pattern is always the same. Cheap money inflates bubbles. Bubbles distort behavior. Reality eventually returns. And when it does, the damage is magnified. What's different now is scale. Global debt has surpassed levels never seen before. Governments, corporations, households are leveraged to the same system. There is no clean exit. At its core, zero interest rates are not about growth. They're about control. They keep governments solvent. They keep markets inflated. They keep populations dependent on credit. When money is free, discipline disappears. When savings don't work, speculation replaces prudence. When debt feels painless, it grows unchecked. The system doesn't collapse immediately. It decays, and decay is harder to notice. Here are the 3 takeaways from this. First, zero interest rates are not a gift. They are a hidden tax that transfers wealth upward and forward in time. Second, soaring global debt depends on suppressed rates. The system cannot survive honest pricing of money. Third, the longer the lie continues, the more violent the eventual adjustment becomes through inflation, defaults, or monetary resets. There is no free money. There is only postponed cost. Every era that believed otherwise learned the truth the hard way. The question isn't whether the system will change, who pays when it does. Because when interest finally returns to reality, the illusion will collapse on. The hidden tax will come due all at once. If this gave you a new way to see the system you live inside, leave a comment with your thoughts. If you want to keep uncovering the financial truths history tried to bury, subscribe to the Fiscal Archivist. Because understanding the system is the first step to escaping its traps.